What if I told you the moment you stop chasing the man who's always pulling away is the very moment he begins to question everything, not because you manipulated him, not because you played a game, but because you finally remembered who the hell you are. And when a woman stops begging for breadcrumbs and starts walking in her power, the man who once ran stops in his tracks wondering how he ever let you slip through his fingers. Avoidant men aren't heartless, cold, or incapable of love. In fact, many of them feel deeply, but they hide it behind emotional walls they spent years building. These walls don't exist because they don't crib, they exist because caring feels dangerous. For an avoidant man, love represents a loss of something they hold sacred control. The avoidant attachment style is often born in childhood from experiences where closeness led to pain, shame, or disappointment. Maybe their emotions were dismissed. Maybe their independence was forced too early. Maybe every time they needed someone, that need was met with criticism or distance. So as adults, they learn to equate emotional intimacy with danger. Not physical danger, but danger of being seen, known, and possibly abandoned again. Love became risky business. So when you chase them, even with the purest intentions, they don't experience it as love. They experience it as pressure. Your desire for connection, consistency, and closeness, things that feel nurturing to you, feel overwhelming to them. Why? Because every text, every call, where are we going, chips away at the illusion of control they've worked so hard to maintain. It's not that they don't want love, it's that they fear being consumed by it. They fear losing themselves, their space, and their autonomy. And ironically, the more you try to get closer, the more they pull away, not because they want to hurt you, but because they're trying to protect themselves. But here's what shifts the dynamic when you stop chasing, when you stop proving your worth, when you stop trying to be understood by someone who's running from their own emotions. Your absence removes the pressure. Suddenly, they don't feel smothered. Suddenly, there's space for their own feelings to surface without being forced. And in that space, the magic begins. The control they feared losing, it no longer needs defending. The love they were afraid of drowning in, it becomes something they can actually miss. Because now you're not a pursuer. They are. They feel the gap. They wonder where you went. They notice the calm, the silence, the shift. And they begin to question everything they once believed. Was I wrong about her? Did I push away something real? Why do I feel this way now that she's not chasing? That's the beginning of their change. Not from your words or your pleas or your pursuit, but from the space your strength created. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to explain yourself 100 times to make someone understand your worth. Sometimes the most powerful transformation happens in complete silence, when your energy shifts. And this shift isn't about playing hard to get or acting like you don't care. It's a deep inner recalibration of your entire being. It's the moment you stop looking outward for validation and you turn your attention inward. It's not a strategy. It's a breakthrough. When you're in an anxious cycle with an avoidant man, your energy often screams lack. It radiates need, uncertainty, and a subtle or sometimes disparate longing to be chosen. That energy might not come through your words, but it pulses underneath everything. It says, please see me, please value me, please choose me so I can finally feel safe. And while that desire is completely human and understandable, it creates a dynamic where you give your power away in hopes of being loved. Avoidant men are highly sensitive to this kind of energy, not in a conscious, logical way, but in a felt, instinctive way. They pick up on that inner tension, and because they fear being emotionally engulfed, that energy pushes them further away. You may think you're being loving, attentive, or available, but if your energy carries anxiety and urgency, they'll feel it like a tidal wave crashing over their carefully guarded boundaries. But the moment you shift, really shift, something dramatic happens. Your energy no longer says, I need you to complete me. It says, I am whole, whether you stay or not. You move from proving to embodying. You stop grasping and instead begin receiving. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about truly finding peace and fulfillment within yourself. You wake up and no longer check your phone hoping for a text. You go out and laugh with friends not to distract yourself, but because joy is finally flowing through you again. And here's the beautiful, ironic twist. They feel it. They don't just notice your silence. They feel the shift in your energy, even if they can't explain it. The pull they once resisted now feels magnetic. They become curious, maybe even confused. Why does she feel different? Why do I miss her now? What changed? They may not even realize what's happening, but something inside them begins to stir. Something starts to chase you. This is not manipulation. It's alignment. When you stop radiating scarcity and begin radiating self-worth, everything begins to rearrange. Not because you forced it, because you became the version of yourself that no longer needed to. Thriving isn't a tactic. It's not something you pretended just to get a reaction. It's not about making him jealous or posting curated photos to show him what he's missing. Thriving is a state of being, a frequency you step into when you decide that your life, your joy, your wholeness is no longer going to be postponed for anyone. It's the moment you stop trying to fix someone else and start fully showing up for yourself. Many people confuse the idea of thriving with being emotionally distant or unavailable. But thriving doesn't mean closing your heart. It means you're done shrinking yourself for love. You're done dimming your light just to keep someone comfortable. You're done putting your healing on hold because someone else is stuck in their fear. When you start thriving, you begin living with intention. You reconnect with what lights you up, what moves your soul, what brings your peace. You start pouring into your passions, nurturing your body, investing in your dreams. not to prove a point, but because you finally realize you're worthy of it all. Whether someone loves you or not, whether they stay or whether they notice or not, you keep rising. That rising creates a vibration, a frequency shift. You walk differently. You speak with clarity and groundedness. You set boundaries not to punish others, but to protect your energy. Your eyes glow with purpose. You laugh with sincerity. And guess what? That energy is magnetic. It pulls people in, not just him, everyone. Friends, opportunities, new connections, even random strangers. Your light is no longer begging for attention. It's attracting everything meant for you. And the avoidant man who once felt in control of the dynamic, he starts to feel it. You're no longer orbiting his world. You've become a world of your own. The emotional power balance shifts. The person he once viewed as too much suddenly feels distant, untouchable, radiant. It triggers something in him. Curiosity, loss, maybe even admiration. He may not understand it at first, but on a deep level, he senses the difference. You didn't punish him. You didn't beg, explain. You just choose yourself. And the energy that choice emits says more than any words ever could. It's not about pretending to thrive. It's about actually doing it, because that's when everything begins to shift, both inside you and around you. When you step back from chasing, explaining, or trying to be understood by an avoidant man, something unexpected happens. The silence begins to speak loudly. The very space you once feared, the absence, the disconnect, the quiet is exactly what starts to shift the dynamic. Why? Because avoidant men don't reflect when they're being chased. They reflect when things go still. Avoidants are often overwhelmed by emotional intensity. When you're constantly reaching out, trying to connect, expressing your needs, or reacting to their distance, they're in defensive mode. Their nervous system is wired to preserve space, to maintain control, to avoid being engulfed by emotional demands. So instead of thinking about the relationship or even their own feelings, they're busy pulling away, deflecting, or avoiding. Their primary focus comes escaping pressure, not understanding you. But when you step back, you take that pressure off. You stop texting, justifying. You stop filling the space. And in that space, something powerful begins to unfold. Without the noise, without the push, without the emotional intensity, there's nothing left for them to fight against. Suddenly, they're left alone with their thoughts, with themselves, and in that silence, they begin to notice the absence, not just of your words, of your presence, the emotional energy you used to pour into them. It's gone. And that absence becomes loud. At first, they may feel relief. Many avoidant types will feel temporarily free when the chase ends. But over time, the emptiness doesn't feel so peaceful. It starts to feel unfamiliar. There's no one checking in, no one validating them, no one anchoring them emotionally. That comfort zone they relied on now feels hollow. And it's in that moment, the moment where silence becomes uncomfortable. That reflection begins. They may not call it missing you. They may not even know how to put it into words. But a shift happens. They begin to think, to wonder, to ask questions like, why don't I feel the same without her attention? Or was I too quick to push her away? That stillness, that space gives their mind and heart room to catch up to what they avoided feeling all along. This is why stepping back isn't passive. It's incredibly powerful because it breaks the pattern. It interrupts the chase and escape cycle. It offers both of you space. But most importantly, it creates the only condition under which an avoidant might actually start to reflect stillness. And that stillness, while it may feel scary to you at first, can be the very thing that opens the door to their growth. When you begin to grow genuinely, deeply, and unapologetically, you become something more than just a partner, a lover, or a memory. You become a mirror, and that mirror reflects things that an avoidant man has spent his whole life trying to avoid. Not just his feelings about you, but the truths about himself he's not ready to face. And that reflection can be both powerful and terrifying. Avoidant men build emotional walls to protect themselves from vulnerability, rejection, and the risk of being truly known. When you're emotionally chasing, over-explaining, or constantly seeking validation, it keeps the focus off them. They get to remain behind the glass wall, watching you try to figure out how to win their love, never truly needing to confront their own emotional unavailability or fear of intimacy. But when you stop doing that, when you pull your energy back and start growing into your full self, you no longer reflect their safety. You reflect their lack of growth. Your evolution becomes unavoidable. They see the strength they didn't cultivate, the emotional presence they didn't offer, the maturity they've been running from. And in contrast to your growth, their stagnation becomes glaring. You become the mirror that silently asks them, why haven't you evolved? Why are you still hiding? Why did you push away someone who's capable of real love? This kind of growth is threatening, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you shine a light on the very parts of them they've kept in the dark. You no longer chase, beg, or break yourself into pieces trying to fit into their emotional limitations. You've stepped out of the pattern. And by doing so, you show them what self-worth looks like, what emotional responsibility feels like, what a whole, healed person sounds like. Some avoidant men will resist this reflection. They'll criticize, withdraw further, or act like you've changed in a bad way. But that's just deflection. Deep down, they see the mirror. They feel it. Your strength forces them to confront their weakness. Your growth exposes their fear. Your emotional freedom reveals their emotional prison. And even if they don't say it out loud, even if they stay silent, your transformation leaves an impression. They remember. They think. And whether they choose to change or not, they can't unsee the version of you that chose power over pleading. Your evolution becomes a turning point. point, not just for the relationship, but for who they believe they are when love stops chasing and starts rising. When you've spent so long over explaining your needs, softening your boundaries, and compromising your self-worth just to keep a connection alive, it can feel radical, almost rebellious, to finally let your standards speak for themselves. But there comes a moment in every empowered woman's journey when words are no longer necessary. You don't plead, you don't write long emotional texts trying to be heard. Instead, you embody your worth through action, and your standards become louder than any conversation could ever be. Avoidant men often operate in gray areas. They're not entirely gone, but never fully present. They push you away just enough to keep control, yet close enough to keep you hoping. It's an emotionally confusing space designed to avoid commitment while still receiving emotional benefits. And when you're caught in that dance, you often lower your standards bit by bit without even realizing it, just to maintain the connection. You ignore the red flags, rationalize the emotional distance. You tell yourself, maybe he's just different. But all the while, you're eroding your own voice. The moment you stop settling, when you no longer respond to half-hearted messages, stop accepting inconsistent behavior, and stop showing up for someone who doesn't consistently show up for you, that's when your energy changes. You don't need to explain your worth. You simply act like someone who knows it. You're no longer available for one-sided love, vague intentions, or emotional breadcrumbs. And that shift, though quiet, is seismic. This doesn't mean you become harsh or cold. It means you become clear. Your silence in the face of disrespect speaks volumes. Your refusal to entertain confusing behavior signals maturity. Your decision to walk away from anything that doesn't meet your emotional standards shows self-respect. And avoidant men feel this shift deeply. They might not say it out loud, but they notice when your energy no longer seeks them out. They notice when your responses slow down, when your tone becomes neutral, when your availability decreases, not out of punishment, but because you're now protecting your peace. And in that space, your standards begin to act like a boundary line they can't cross without change. They're no longer allowed, and without consistency, clarity, and effort, they realize that access to you is no longer guaranteed. It must be earned. And whether they rise to meet you or not, they understand you're not the same woman who once been herself to be chosen. You're the woman who chooses herself, and that changes everything. The truth is, not every avoidant man will change. Some will stay stuck in their patterns for years, running from connection, fearing intimacy, and sabotaging the very love they crave deep down. But that's not the part that matters most. What truly matters is you. Because once you begin to shift, once you decide to stop shrinking, begging, or chasing, you will never be the same woman again. That transformation is irreversible. That's where the real power lies. When you finally let go of the idea that your worth is tied to someone's ability to love you correctly, something inside you awakens. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to earn affection. You begin to understand that love doesn't require you to chase. It asks you to receive. And that change in perspective doesn't just alter how you view the avoidant man. It changes how you move through life, relationships, and most importantly, your relationship with yourself. Some avoidant men will feel that shift and rise. They'll recognize what they're about to lose. They'll start to reflect, reach out, maybe even open in ways they never have before. But others, they won't. They'll retreat further into themselves, rationalize their detachment, and choose safety over growth. It can be painful to accept, but it's also deeply liberating because your healing no longer depends on what they do. You've reclaimed your emotional independence. You become the kind of woman who sets the tone, not waits for one. You stop performing for love and start living in alignment with your truth. Your joy no longer hinges on whether he calls, texts, or comes back because you've discovered that your peace, your confidence, and your self-worth were never his to give. They were yours to remember. This kind of shift is rare. It's magnetic. It's powerful, and it echoes far beyond the relationship that triggered it. It touches every area of your life. People start responding to you differently. Opportunities open up. You radiate a calm strength that others can feel, not because you're trying to be strong, but because you are. You earned it through your own inner work. So whether he changes or not becomes secondary, because the real victory is this: you changed. You stopped chasing someone who could meet you where you were. You choose yourself. And once a woman does that, she never goes back to begging for half love. She becomes the standard. She becomes the shift. She becomes the lesson. When you finally stop chasing an avoidant man and start thriving, everything changes. But most importantly, you change. You step out of the exhausting cycle of proving your worth to someone who struggles to receive love, and you begin to remember who you were before you started bending and shrinking to fit someone else's emotional limits. You shift your focus from what they're doing, thinking, or feeling, and you return that energy to yourself. In that shift, you awaken a level of strength, self-respect, and clarity that no one can give you and no one can take away. It's not just about walking away. It's about walking home to yourself. When you begin to grow, set boundaries, and live with intention, your energy shifts in ways that are impossible to ignore. You're no longer available for inconsistency, confusion, or half-hearted love. You don't need to raise your voice or explain yourself endlessly. Your presence speaks. Your absence speaks even louder. And in that silence, in that energetic distance, something happens on their side too. Sometimes they begin to reflect. Sometimes they reach back out. And sometimes they don't. But either way, the dynamic is no longer on repeat. The old pattern breaks the moment you stop feeding it, and as you thrive, you stop needing their validation to feel whole. You discover that the peace you were begging them to give you could be created within yourself. That confidence isn't something you gain when someone chooses you. It's something you reclaim when you choose yourself. You start to attract differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself as someone who knows her worth, not as someone waiting to be reminded of it. And from that place of alignment, clarity, and self-love, you become magnetic, not just to romantic partners, but to life itself. The beauty of this journey is that it's not about whether the avoidant changes. It's about the fact that you did. You grew. You evolved. You stopped waiting to be loved right and started loving yourself the way you always deserved. That shift can't be undone. That healing can't be reversed. Whether they wake up to your value or continue to sleep on it is no longer your concern, because you're no longer in the business of convincing anyone of your worth. You've stepped into a new chapter, one where you're not chasing anything. You're becoming everything. Thank you so much for watching and spending your time here with me today. If this message resonated with you, know that you are not alone, and you are far more powerful than the patterns you've been stuck in. This journey of healing, rising, and choosing yourself is not easy, but it's worth it. Every time you decide to honor your worth, you write your story. If you found value in this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world. It helps this message reach people who need to hear it. Until next time, keep thriving, keep choosing you, and remember, you are the shift. Take care, stay strong, and goodbye for now.